Hello everyone, it's Nita and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought it'd be fun to take a look at some of the books I had seen get super popular on BookTok or BookTube over the last couple of years. Basically go through and give my thoughts on the ones of those that I have read. This list is basically going to be all positive reviews. These are the ones that I have liked and think that the hype is justified for. I have quite a few books on this list, so with that intro out of the way, let's get into the video. The first book we're going to be talking about is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I think, yes, the hype for this is definitely justified. This is a book that has a lot to say. I think it blends a lot of things really well. It has good atmosphere and scenes with a lot of tension. There's a more literary side and then a more thriller side. All of the characters are so flawed, but you also can't help but be entranced by them. And I think when you have a book like this that is so nuanced and complicated, it leads to a lot of personal interpretation and a desire for discussion. So it makes sense why people would like it and want to talk about it online. And I do think on a more superficial level, it's about a bunch of young rich people at an elite college. At the very least, people love the aesthetic of dark academia, even if they don't really engage with the text on a deeper level. Another kind of similar book I wanted to put on this list is Bunny by Mona Awad. This book I do feel like I need to do a reread for. I read this back in 2020 when I was first getting back into reading. And I feel like I need to reread this because the big twist at the end still will throw me for a loop whenever I think about it. The only negative thing I have to say about the book itself is I feel like the ending is kind of abrupt and not very satisfying. Another kind of overarching flaw is the fact that this is a book that I think a lot of people will misinterpret and think that it's goals when it's actually not supposed to be. I think the meme of if a man tells you his favorite movie is American Psycho, run, kind of applies to this. It's if a girl tells you her favorite book is Bunny, run. Because she's probably putting the cultish, toxic female friendship elements in that book on a pedestal. Another hyped up BookTok book that I really, really love is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I think this book is so funny. I think the characters are really well developed. There's also a lot of side characters that you learn to love throughout the story, so it has more than just the central couple going for it. I did want to say I do really like the movie adaptation, but definitely less so than the book. That doesn't always happen for me, but it's definitely because of the reason I said before. The movie just doesn't focus as much on the side characters, and not having them there definitely was a missing piece that I really wished was included in the movie. But I do really enjoy the original book. I gave it 5 stars when I originally read it. I don't know if I necessarily give it 5 stars now, but I do still like it quite a bit and definitely recommend it. The next books I wanted to talk about are The Song of Achilles and Cersei, both by Madeline Miller. I think both of these are totally worth it. I definitely think The Song of Achilles is a little bit more hyped up on BookTok compared to Cersei, but both of these books I gave 5 stars and love them both so much. I really love Madeline Miller's writing style, and I think both of these books are so well designed in I love the endings of both of them so much. I think Cersei is probably one of the most perfect endings I've read in any book ever. However, I do think I like The Song of Achilles a little bit more. I think it overall is a little bit more streamlined, whereas Cersei can feel a little bit more meandering. I also feel like Song of Achilles is a little bit more emotional in how much I love Patroclus as a ship. They really have just got into my head and created a brain rot that sets in the more you think about them. Honestly, definitely due for a reread on both of these books as well. I read these both initially as audiobooks, and I definitely want to go through at least and reread The Song of Achilles physically so I can tab some of my favorite lines. But yes, highly recommend both of these books if you've not checked out Madeline Miller's work. It'll probably be another 3 to 5 years until she publishes another book, so you have plenty of time to catch up and read her original works now. The next book I wanted to talk about is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I think this book is definitely worth the hype. I think this book is so well designed structurally. I really love the 2 dual timelines coming together right at the climax, and I think that overall this is a very creative and unique book with a very creative and unique writing style. Unfortunately, I did not really enjoy The Starless Sea. I originally was going to talk about it in a different reading vlog, but I ended up scrapping that one, so I'll give my brief thoughts on that here. Overall, I just feel like it wasn't as strong of a book story-wise as The Night Circus is. It felt like in that book, some of the kind of more magical elements were done more for aesthetics' sake than actually being relevant to the plot. Whereas I feel like here it all makes sense in the context of what the circus is. So I definitely think this is the stronger of Erin Morgenstern's 2 books. And I definitely recommend it to a lot of people to check out. The next series I wanted to recommend was Six of Crows and The Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. These books are more of a sort of level of if I think the hype is worth it. These books are obviously incredibly well loved by so many people. For me, I'm not a huge fan of Leigh Bardugo's writing style. I've read 2.5 books by her, the other third one being Ninth House, which I ended up DNFing, and I just feel like she kind of is a little bit of a hit or miss author for me. I don't personally love Six of Crows, but I do really like Crooked Kingdom. I do think that is a little bit of personal taste in that I am inflicted with a terrible disease called I Hate Book Kaz Brecker, which is definitely not a common opinion. I just feel like him as our main character, he's mean for really no reason, and he seems to act like he's smarter than he actually is. But all the other crows are amazing, and I really love that how much development they get throughout the series. I didn't really care about Nina and Matthias in the TV show adaptation, but I love them so much in the books. I think Matthias becomes such a interesting and nuanced character and is like a good study of someone who grew up in a very oppressive and bigoted environment, who then expands his mind but is still able to keep his original religious worldview, just adapted to comprehend his actual reality. And I do have to say I love these books because I love the Grishaverse TV show so much, so I do feel like I am biased to like them a little bit more even if I don't love the writing style. Next book I wanted to talk about is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is kind of more of like a sleeper hit. Like, it's not on many people's book talk or booktube recommendations, but it has a very ride or die fan base. Like, I often see if a booktuber mentions they're going to read this, a lot of the comments are people telling them that they will love the book and it's such an amazing book. I feel like this is quite a situational book and it's not for everyone, but I do think it's just on the line of being weird enough that it feels fresh and unique, but still has enough of a structure that I'm not confused the whole time. The next book series we're going to be talking about is The Folk of the Air by Holly Black. I still haven't read the last one, but I do really love the first two and gave them both 4.5 stars. I do feel like this book is a little ill-marketed as a fantasy romance, whereas the romance in actuality is very much like a secondary plot and isn't really what the main character is focused on for the majority of the series. Like, there are some fan service-y moments, but it's not like the end-all be-all of the books. But I do love both these books a lot. I really love the main character, who I've talked about multiple times on this channel. I think she's so unique and different compared to a lot of other cookie cutter female main characters in fantasy series. And I am very excited to eventually finish the series and then read the spin-off series in the future. The next book I wanted to talk about is The Love Hypothesis by Ellie Hazelwood. This is, again, kind of on the fence of if it's actually worth all of the hype. I do have a huge bone to pick, though, for everyone who says, like, it used to be a fanfic, so therefore it's bad. Shame. Shame on you. Fanfiction is an art form the same way that novel writing is. There are good fanfics and there are bad fanfics. There's obviously a big spectrum of quality in fanfiction, and writing all of it off because you don't like one version of it is really close-minded. I think there's also a lot of added hate for people with this book, specifically because it was a Reylo fanfic, and people just really hate Reylos. Again, there's a spectrum. You can't write off a whole fandom just because of a couple bad actors. And honestly, it being fanfic and it being a Reylo fanfic makes me like it a little bit more. And separate from all of that, this book is well written. It's not that groundbreaking, and I can see some of the lines that I think people probably find cringy, but I like it. It's both tropey and realistic, and I feel like treads that line, so in the end, it just ends up being a really good time. Okay, moving on from that, the next book I wanted to talk about is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This book is just really cute. I feel like there are a lot of attempts to perfectly hit that cozy fantasy vibe that was really kicked off with Legends and Lattes, and this is one of the only cozy fantasy books that I feel like is a perfect representation of that genre, while still also being a really good book on its own. It's whimsical, funny, it has high enough stakes where it's not like happy all the time, but you can still kind of read it in a more relaxed way, knowing that nothing bad is going to happen in the end. Overall, really enjoyed this one, and I still have to check out the second part of the series, which hopefully I will be doing very soon. Okay, the next book I wanted to talk about is the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy by Stephanie Garber. I only picked up the first one here because I wasn't about to carry 3 very heavy hardbacks into this room. This series overall is a little on the edge as well. I feel like for this, the series really falters in the end, and just like doesn't really stick the landing. But I don't think that makes the rest of the books bad. Like, there's still a lot of fun times to be had earlier on. And I've said this before, but I feel like this is really a series where you have to read them one after another without any breaks in between and without many expectations. I feel like those who read these books as they were first coming out with a year apart were the ones who got most burned, especially since the second one is definitely the best of the series. And going from that to a more lackluster ending was a little rough. But overall, I still really like this world and Stephanie Garber's writing style. So I think the series is worth checking out overall. Okay, we're down to the last 2 books to talk about. These are both the ones that are more recent book talk / booktube faves. The first one is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is another like sort of book. I haven't read Iron Flame, which does make me a little bit nervous putting this on the list, since a lot of people don't seem to like the second book in the series. I feel like this book is very cheesy and often melodramatic, but I still like it. I do think this is one of the books where the main characters are like half of the worst thing about the book. And overall, the like side characters and more of the like world building stuff is what's actually interesting and good about the book. Like I said, I'm very nervous about eventually reading Iron Flame because a lot of people don't really like that book. So this is kind of like a maybe, and I'll see overall how the rest of the series goes. goes before I actually commit to like recommending this series to people. And the last book I want to talk about in this video was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I think this book is very good. I think it is definitely more romance heavy over being a fantasy, but at the same time, the fantasy parts are very good, and there is a lot of exploration of the perils of war, which I thought was very interesting and well done. This is another one where I definitely need to read the second half of the duology, but I have heard pretty positive things about it, so I think overall the series did end on a positive note, and I'll be very excited to check that out in the near future as well. So that is a look at some of the Popular Booktok books that I think are worth your time. I'd love to know if you have read any of these books or any other like Popular Booktok, BookTube recommendations in the comments down below and what you thought of them. If you guys are interested in seeing my reading updates in real time, you can follow me on the Storygraph, which is linked in my description, as well as following my Bookstagram, which is also in the description. That's going to be it for this video. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!